Hello to everyone and the internet. It is currently Monday, January 7th. I am Nathan of Washington, and you are watching The Young Globalist, and this is the news. Alright, so Nanci Pelosi says that Trump buddying up with Putin is dangerous. Really? Interesting claim. Well, Pelosi is concerned with Trump hanging around with various political leaders she brands thugs. As far as I'm concerned, most politicians are thugs anyway. Doesn't matter what country they're from. Oh yeah, I went there. But the Democrats' disappointment that Trump and Putin did not attack one another in their meeting, because, that's what they do. That's what the Democrats do, and that's what they want everyone to do, because they're the ones that are behind a lot of this vitriol in American politics. But they called him palling around with Putin treasonous, and not just the Democrats, but even some of the Republicans done it too. Some of the old tradcons called him that, saying it was treasonous. How is it treasonous to be meeting with another world leader? I don't understand that. But Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats must not really understand foreign policy. It would be better to have Putin as a friend than as an enemy, if you ask me. Because I don't know about you, but to me that man is downright scary. There have been times in the news media where Putin has literally just made my blood run cold. So I think I'd rather have him as an ally than an enemy. And Trump, he's smart enough to know that that's probably wise. But Trump regularly sanctions Moscow. So how the Democrats' recommendations to Trump, they're just pure foolishness. Their recommendations to him. They'll most likely cause a war. But again, that's probably what they would want, right? Because they're part of the establishment. The establishment would love to have another war. Makes them more powerful. Makes them money. Makes them oil. Makes the gears of the military-industrial complex work. So that's probably what they want. But no, Trump is not completely buddy-buddy with Putin. He's not completely complacent towards Russia, since he regularly sanctions Moscow for various things, sometimes as high as 60%. So yeah, they're hardly buddy-buddy. I think they're just what's the word here? I think they're just being civil with one another, which is certainly something the Democrats don't know how to do. Their civility rating on the civility meter is a flat 0. Absolute flat 0. China's actions of late now make more sense than ever. Because recently, as I've said in past episodes, China's patrol behavior of last year, which, by the way, the ships, their various sea vessels and ships basically bullying U.S. vessels to stay beyond a certain distance, even though they had the legal right to be as close as they were. The order of its military, it's like their current Prime Minister Xi Jinping, I believe his name is, Xi Jinping, has ordered its military to prepare for a major conflict. And the fact that Xi seems to be worried about U.S.-backed Taiwan brings the recent actions into light, that it was not just a single warship or a group of warships from China being bullies. It was all of them, probably by Jinping's secret order. But they were being overly aggressive and territorial, also demanding the U.S. stop flying over their man-made islands, even though they have the legal right to do flyovers. But it would have been this seems like it would have been to establish a situation where it would be difficult for the U.S. To aid Taiwan in the event of a civil war, because if you didn't know, the separated island of Taiwan, which is not currently a part of China's main government, actually what's left of their former communist government is there in Taiwan, are backed by the U.S. And if a civil war in China were to break out, the U.S. would back Taiwan. So it could be it's been in preparation to try and keep the U.S. from supporting Taiwan directly. That would seem to be the case, based on what I can tell what's going on. That seems like a fairly likely scenario, given the information. Some Chinese American political analysts suggest that Prime Minister Xi's orders to China's military were merely a warning. That's a perhaps, perhaps not kind of thing. Maybe it was just a warning. Maybe it was something more. Still, China's actions of late seems pretty clear to me that they're afraid of a civil war with Taiwan, and they're afraid that the U.S. would choose to recognize and back Taiwan, which is a very likely scenario. So I hate to admit it, but Prime Minister Xi is being very realistic. Pro-EU MPs in Britain are planning government sabotage to try and stop Brexit. As if Britain's government right now wasn't despotic enough, they got this to worry about. Pro-EU MPs are planning a UK government shutdown to prevent Brexit. A group of pro-EU MPs are plotting a UK government shutdown in order to prevent Brexit from happening on the 29th of March, 2019. The group of Remainer politicians say they will stop a no-deal Brexit by starving the UK Treasury of funds, which they boast will lead to total paralysis of the government. That would be the sabotage I mentioned. Breitbart.com reports the MPs are set to vote on 2 amendments to the finance bill, which grants funds to the Treasury to spend on implementing no-deal arrangements on Tuesday. Labour's Yvette Cooper MP, who leads the group that includes former Tory ministers Nicky Morgan, Oliver Letwin, and Nick Bolas, said our amendment would block some of the Treasury's no-deal powers unless Parliament has explicitly voted for no deal or unless the government has requested an extension of Article 50. We'll be looking to table similar safeguards to all government legislation. Ms. Cooper added, with the Sunday Times reporting that the plans also had the backing of select committee leaders Hilary Benn, Rachel Reeves, Harriet Harman, all from the Labour Party, Frank Field, formerly Labour, and Sarah Blaston, Conservative. 2 members of Prime Minister Theresa May's team told the Times on Saturday that the plan could lead to the total paralysis of government. A senior government source added that Ms. Cooper's amendments would be the first of many attempts to stop a no-deal Brexit should MPs vote down Mrs. May's unpopular EU withdrawal agreement in the week beginning January 15th. May's withdrawal argument has found opposition from Brexiteers, resulting in the Prime Minister postponing the House of Commons vote before Christmas and face a certain defeat, mainly over the issue of the Irish backstop, which could see Northern Ireland locked into regulatory alignment with the bloc after the transition period. Should London and Brussels not strike a deal in order to stop a so-called hard border with EU member state Republic of Ireland? What the established media has taken to referring to the plot as a Trump-style government shutdown, I kind of saw that conclusion coming. The comparison misses a fundamental point. President Donald Trump's shutdown is intended to push the American government to fulfill the will of the American people by securing the U.S.'s southern border, while Cooper's team seeks to shut down the British government to frustrate the will of the people. So it's the exact opposite. It's hardly Trump-style. Both the Labour and Conservative Party's 2017 general election manifestos ran on pledges to respect the referendum vote and leave the EU, while Mrs. May has been pushing MPs to accept her withdrawal agreement, a no-deal Brexit. The default legal position of the lower house's votes down May's agreement is fulfilling the referendum result, as Tory MP Peter Bone told Sky News Sophie Ridge on Sunday. The only way you're going to get on and deliver Brexit is what's called a no-deal Brexit. And at the end of March, we'll be out of the EU and we will have left. There was no question that I remember on the referendum about a deal or not. It was leave or remain, and the way you leave is to come out on the 29th of March. Yeah, Britain's a hell of a place these days. Straight up government sabotage if they try and vote for a Brexit. They just want to stay in that tyrannical little EU, don't they? Europe. Culturally rich, politically shallow, and full of despotism. America kind of got it wrong. We stood against Europeanism. We should have stood against European politics, but not necessarily stand against the culture. Still, I think it's pretty obvious that these people are clearly not in any way wanting a Brexit. And you cannot compare that to the shutdown of the U.S. government. It's a completely opposite situation. That's like comparing apples and oranges. Pelosi sneaks a little something extra into the end of the shutdown bill. $5 million in abortion funding paid to the service of the UN. Now, there was a bill written a while back that prevented foreign funding to non-governmental agencies handling abortion. But apparently Nanci Pelosi is trying to either sneak past that bill or repeal it altogether. Her latest shutdown bill proposal, a bill to end the government shutdown, didn't include any wall funding, but it did include $5 million in abortion funding paid to the service of the United Nations. Of course, Trump is going to shoot it down if he hasn't already. Sneaky, sneaky. I'll tell you, that reminds me a lot of this tactic they use here in Washington State that has literally driven me insane. I'm sick of them doing this. Is them creating a really awesome bill, this nice idea that everyone likes, conservative, liberal, and libertarian alike, and then somewhere in that bill they sneak in a little something that they've been trying to get passed but no one wanted. Like making a budget bill for a state budget that also very secretly contains like a gun control bill. It's like, damn it, stop it with that shit. This reminds me a lot of that same tactic. That makes me think a lot of it. And I don't know if other states do that, but that's definitely something that happens in Washington that literally drives me up the wall. I have to ask myself, has Nanci Pelosi been hanging out with Jay Inslee? A.K.A. Obama's former sock puppet? Obama Jr.? He just kind of echoed all of his ideas? Yeah, I hate Jay Inslee. I hate Jay Inslee so very, very much. Obama's sock puppet. That's who he was in his first term. Okay, so I'm going to read you an article about something even I'm a little dubious about. Oh, hold on a second. Is a Rockefeller Foundation syphilis experiment. Seems to be a little something going on with my voice. Maybe I'm getting sick. Says the Rockefeller Foundation is facing a $1 billion lawsuit for deliberately infecting hundreds of Guatemalans with syphilis in a secret experiment. Ugh. A federal judge in Maryland allowed the lawsuit against the Johns Hopkins University Bristol-Myers Squibb Co. and the Rockefeller Foundation to proceed after it discovered they helped the U.S. government conduct illegal experiments on unsuspecting citizens in the 1940s. Routers.com, one of my favorite sources, by the by, in a decision on Thursday, U.S. District Judge Theodore Chuang rejects the defendant's argument that a recent Supreme Court decision shielding foreign corporations from lawsuits in U.S. courts over human rights abuses abroad also applied to domestic corporations absent congressional authorization. Chuang's decision is a victory for 444 victims and relatives of victims suing over the experiment, which was aimed at testing the then new drug penicillin and stopping the spread of sexually transmitted diseases. The experiment echoed the government's Tuskegee study on black American men who were deliberately left untreated for syphilis even after penicillin was discovered. It was kept under wraps until a professor at Wellesley College in Massachusetts discovered it in 2010. U.S. officials apologized for the experiment. President Barack Obama called Guatemala's president to offer a personal apology. Of course he did. Remember Obama's apology tour? Chuang said lawsuits against U.S. corporations under the federal Allen Tort Statute were not categorically foreclosed by the Supreme Court decision last April 24th in Jessner versus Arab Bank PLC covering foreign corporations. He said the need for judicial caution was markedly reduced, where U.S. corporations were defendants because there was no threat of diplomatic tensions or objections from foreign governments. The judge also said letting the Guatemala case proceed would promote harmony by giving foreign plaintiffs a chance at a remedy in U.S. courts. According to the complaint, several Hopkins and Rockefeller Foundation doctors were involved with the experiment, as were 4 executives from Bristol Myers, predecessors Bristol Laboratories, and the Squibb Institute. Johns Hopkins expresses profound sympathy for individuals and families impacted by the deplorable 1940 syphilis study funded and conducted by the U.S. government in Guatemala. The university said in a statement, "We respect the legal process and we will continue to vigorously defend the lawsuit." A Rockefeller Foundation spokesman said that the lawsuit had no merit, that the nonprofit did not know about, design, or fund or manage the experiment. Bristol Myers spokesman Brian Castelli declined to comment. Paul Beckman, a lawyer for the plaintiffs, said his clients will proceed with discovery, including the exchange of decades-old documents. An early ruling finding no statute of limitations issues if the plaintiffs could not have learned about the experiment before 2010. This experiment began 72 years ago. It's hard to believe, Beckman said. The case is estate of Arturo Giron Alvarez et al. V. The Johns Hopkins University et al. U.S. District Court, District of Maryland, number 15. They might have a pretty solid case about this. I mean, I've heard of the syphilis experiment before, the Tuskegee experiment. I don't know if the Rockefellers had clear involvement, but yeah, I've known about it for years. It's pretty well documented. I like watching documentaries on stuff sometimes. So I don't know about you, but I experience a sort of this weird tingling sensation towards the back of my head when absorbing large amounts of information, usually in documentaries. I really like that feeling. It's sort of like this weird energetic feeling because I'm absorbing the information. It kind of gets me excited. A lot of school children actually talk about a similar sensation when they're absorbing a large amounts of very interesting or stimulating knowledge. This sort of tingling stimulation sensation towards the upper brainstem. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon. I'm not sure what to make of it. But I do really like documentaries, and I saw the one on that years ago. So I don't remember every little detail, but I know it had some involvement with a bunch of black dudes in Tuskegee. And of course, some people were racist, and they tried to blame it on the fact they were black, and you know how black men sleep around and all that is the argument they used. But of course, it would seem that they were deliberately experimented on. And it looks like the Rockefellers may have been involved, so they could have a case here. I certainly think that it's a good chance. There's a good chance of it, because Rockefellers are establishmentarians. They always have been, and the establishment of the United States is corrupt as all hell. So, at least from an emotional standpoint, I want to believe it, and from an intellectual standpoint, I also want to believe it. But being the skeptic that I am, I want due process to be enforced, and I want to be absolutely certain that it is actually true before I make a judgment, of course. But not others may not be as reasonable as me on that. Anyway, I'm assuming I'm saying this right. Rashida Tlaib. She's a congresswoman who may have been funded by George Soros. I got an article for you here. Another article. Sometimes I do these ones where I read the article because it's just a little too nuanced. You really got to read the source for this one. She says that the foul-mouthed congresswoman referred to President Trump as a motherfucker this week rose to power via globalist billionaire George Soros. In other words, she's probably an SJW or leftist-leaning person. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib failed to disclose her financial ties to Soros as required by the House Ethics Committee, and also disclosed a lesser amount than what she actively received according to a review of tax forms. Freebeacon.com, which I originally misread as Free Bacon, for those of you who are meat eaters out there, There's a little joke for you. The Washington Free Beacon obtained the most recent copies of tax forms for a number of Soros' organizations, including the Open Society Institute. That's the big one. The legal name for the Open Society Foundations, the entity in which Soros pushes millions in funding to a number of liberal causes and organizations. An expenditure of $85,307 to Rashida Tlaib in Detroit, Michigan, from 2017 is shown on page 97 of the 321-page report to increase involvement of disenfranchised urban communities of color with the local governance process by creating a community benefit strategy for equitable development and creating a leadership training for impacted residents focused on negotiation skills and identifying leverage at the local level. Tlaib did not report any income in the amount of $85,307 on financial disclosure forms submitted as she was running for office, which identified the names of the sources that provided her income. In 3 of 4 cases, Tlaib received compensation from the Maurice and Jane Sugar Law Center, Wayne State University, and Metro Solutions, the forms show. However, the 4th reported source of earned income is marked as a leadership in government fellowship, but does not identify who provided the payment. A press release from 2016 shows that Tlaib was chosen for a leadership in government fellowship by Soros' Open Society Foundations, along with 7 other individuals. The 8 fellows chosen from the senior ranks of federal, state, and local government will work on a wide variety of issue areas, devising new ways to bring criminal justice reform to local prosecutors' offices, developing new strategies for helping school children exposed to trauma, improving life outcomes for low-wage workers, immigrants, and boys and men of color, and closing the digital divide, and more, the release reads. A spokesman for Soros' Open Society Foundation said Tlaib's fellowship was terminated earlier this year when she informed the group she would be running for Congress. Kendra Arnold, executive director of the Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust, a Washington, D.C. based watchdog group, said that Tlaib's failure to report the source of her income is problematic due to rules requiring that the income source be identified. Candidates are required to disclose the name of the groups and organizations that provide their source of income. According to the Manual on Financial Disclosure Statements from the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Ethics, identify the source by naming the organization, corporation, or other entity making the payment. It is not necessary that individual clients of a business be named, only the business itself, the manual states on page 31. For example, on Schedule C, an editor would report the name of the publishing firm as the source of earned income, not the clients for whom the work was performed, describing the type of income as salary, commissions, fees, pensions, etc. as appropriate. The $68,307 income marked for the leadership and government fellowship on the financial disclosure forms is also $17,000 less than the $85,307 that was marked as being paid out by Soros' group. Arnold said this discrepancy is not as clear and could be the result of hard costs associated with the program. Filers must report the exact amount of income earned by them. The ethics manual reads, filers are not required to report an amount for their spouse's income. Rather, they should report not available in the amount column. Filers, however, are required to report the exact amount of an honorarium received by their spouse. Tlaib was paid $139,873 by Soros' group in 2016. Tax forms show. Between 2016 and 2017, Tlaib received a total of $225,180. Tlaib did not receive any income from the Open Society Foundations in 2018, Soros' spokesman said. Tlaib's campaign acknowledged receiving the Washington Free Beacons inquiry, but did not explain why the source of funding was excluded from her financial disclosure forms, and why the amount is lower than what she actually received by press time. And again, we see evidence that Soros has been backing yet another dissident figure in politics, or an SJW-like figure. And what could he possibly have to gain from this, if not creating dissent with the direction, well, the political direction was just going against what he wants. It's obvious he's trying to sow seeds of dissent. They deny that she received funding in 2018. Yet why yet why was she not able to provide the source of her funding? Obvious attempt on her part and their part as well to make it seem like she wasn't receiving funding from their group, but actually was. An obvious attempt at deception. Antifa creates no fascist zones, aka no conservative zones, since they decided to label any conservatives or any Trump supporters as fascists. Personally, if I were in charge of of whatever group has purview in this area, I would declare Antifa terrorists and I would round them up for mass arrest. They've broken a bunch of different laws. They create chaos. They're a huge problem. They are an urban terrorist organization, and they should be arrested. Can't do the time, don't do the crime. I actually happen to personally know someone, recently made friends with someone who is in Antifa. He seems nice. He seems like a chill dude, but I consider the possibility that it could just be a persona, and that his true self is actually more along the lines of a violent Antifa member as they appear in the media. I mean, they supposedly ID'd someone who they said was a Proud Boy that wasn't even a Proud Boy. These guys are so delusional that they think anyone is and everyone is an enemy. They need to be taken down and arrested, right? Take these guys seriously. They're a huge problem. I would arrest all of them, even my buddy. I would have them all arrested, and I would have them, do the time for their crimes. The law's the law. Even if they're right and the conservatives are fascists, the law's the law. Taking over city streets to try and direct traffic, which general vigilantism, assault, murder, assault and murder type stuff. They're breaking all kinds of laws. I don't care even if their cause is just. They still broke the law. And that is that. That, as they say, is that. But these no fascist zones, I warn all of my conservative viewers and any Trump viewers, stay out of these areas that they've isolated. Which, at least one of them was in Nashville, Tennessee. And various other locations that I was unable to recognize because, well, I'm really terrible at geography, so yeah, maybe I can see if I can find that for you. I'm gonna give it a go here. So, Antifa, no fascist zones map. They got this tactic from the frickin' the European Islam groups, by the way. Okay. Maybe I can use my browser's history here. Yeah, I really should have included that, but here we go. No, wait, I just did that. Ah! Sometimes. Let's see if I can find it. Ah, there we go. It doesn't look like they've actually created these zones just yet, but they're working on it. Okay, here we go. So, Nashville Arts District. The Nashville Arts District has been identified as one area. Also, a place called 5 Points in Maxwell, probably the same area, and then in this area we have the Centennial Sportsplex, Vanderbilt University. Looks like it's all in the South and other highly conservative cultural areas. Go figure. Yeah, like I said, they're basically just terrorists. I'd say arrest every last single one of them. And from our final story in the Young Globalist today, ISIS's dying gasp. A missile attack against British Special Forces. Several of them were injured, and I think at least one of them were killed. ISIS has been, by and large, mostly defeated, as Trump said, and the data is well reflected. By military standards, they have been beaten back enough to be considered defeated. But, you know, Britain decided that if we were in a world police, they were, and now they've went and got themselves hurt. Go figure. When will it all end? The insanity, the global policing. Because before we were doing it, the British were doing it first. A little case of monkey see, monkey do. Anyway, that's it for the Unglobalist today, folks. I'm out.